So let's get to it. It's Friday, 3 November. This is CSC 220, Introduction to Cybersecurity. I just wanted to remind some of you have not yet completed the AFES Phase 1 incident handling. This is the hands-on portion that simulates live physical access to an Association for Endangered Species office, which is normally occupied by a nefarious individual who goes by the name of Sidney Corinth. If you have not yet coordinated your access, or you need to go back in and refine and update some captures, we've been scoring and posting some credit for this, and you do have an opportunity to do it again or to resubmit. As soon as we finish our session, we will have completed a full review of the legal aspects of cyber law and policy, and we will post the 3.4 assessment. It's the first version of the Module 3 assessment. You'll need to have that complete by 1 p.m. Monday. 1 p.m. Monday. Well, we will review the assessment items on 1 p.m. Monday. Any questions before we begin? All right, so in our previous class, we closed out by talking about the Freedom of Information Act. It's a law that requires access to federal information, including data. Some of that information can be redacted or protected from disclosure, but typically what they do is they black out or redact the information. It says that this act does not apply to state, local government agencies, or private businesses and individuals. Yeah, that is true. However, if state, local government agencies, or private businesses and individuals participate in federal funding, there can be FOIA, that's how that's pronounced, FOIA requests that have to be honored depending on what's going on. So I was at a private college, we had a federal grant, and we had to report information to the US federal government, and that information was subject to the Freedom of Information Act of 1966. So I just wanted to clarify that caveat or exception. If a state or local government agency has data or information that is not a part of any federal sphere of influence or funding, then it is true that this act doesn't apply to everybody and everything. Today, we're going to talk about an industry standard. So this is, we've made mention of this before, payment card industry data security standards. So as we've said before, the goal of PCI DSS is to protect cardholder data and sensitive authentication data, PIN codes, that kind of thing, right? And specifically, there are 6 criteria. So this is just a little background on it, provides a baseline of technical and operational requirements, applies to anybody that uses credit cards, debit cards, that kind of thing. It was developed to encourage and enhance and facilitate the broad adoption. But make no mistake about it, it's a serious standard, because if you're found to be in violation of the standard, your right to process and use cards can be revoked, and that's a serious matter. What's significant about this international standard, other than, yeah, your card to use, your ability or permission, your right to use credit cards with customers could be revoked. Did I mention that they can revoke your ability to use credit cards and payment cards with customers, right? So if you don't abide by these requirements, that fact all by itself is significant, but there are 6 requirements. People who use credit card systems are supposed to build and maintain a secure network and systems that are connected. Now, If you use a credit card machine that connects to your internet service provider, it is your internet service provider that has to secure that network. Does everybody understand what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's one of those things that people don't even think about, but it's like, that's serious, right? Protect cardholder data. That is another thing that's an important aspect of this. So whenever the cardholder data numbers or codes are stored, those have to be protected using a form of encryption. You see the word encrypt here. That's significant. You have to maintain a vulnerability or exposure management program. So you have to basically test your systems and networks for things like malware, and you have to have firewalls, maintain secure systems and applications. So you see they don't spell it out. They don't say firewall in this particular criteria. They're basically talking about it. You have to develop and maintain secure systems, and a network firewall is a piece of that. Let's pause for just a second so I can update. There we go. Let's go back. Implement strong access control measures. Now, when we say access control measures, we're talking about the identity and access management components, commonly known as login accounts, right? So you have accounts and you have authentication mechanisms where you have passwords or shared secrets or PIN codes that authenticate a user. So access control also has to do with the permissions associated with data files or directories. So when we say access control, we're talking about the full range of user identity, account security, account authentication. We're talking about auditing or logging. We're talking about permissions and privileges configured. So if you don't have something called role-based access control, that's a best practice, or some other form of access control, that's not a good thing. The data is restricted on a need-to-know basis, and you restrict physical access to cardholder data. That means you don't have a laptop to which someone can lay hands on. If you have a laptop with cardholder data, it needs to be encrypted. And that's one way of restricting physical access. So encryption comes into the play again. Even though it's not explicitly stated, there are security elements that apply. Okay, so when we say restrict physical access to cardholder data, think in terms of a smartphone or a laptop, where there's a card reader and somebody needs to protect the data in case the smartphone, mobile device, or laptop is stolen, or in case somebody physically accesses an office PC, right? Any questions so far?
Nope, not for me.
Okay. Regularly monitor and test networks. So if you're monitoring and testing networks, that means you're assessing the exposure on the network and you're seeing what kind of traffic is going on across that network. That implies logging or auditing. Maintain an information security policy. That means that you have a set of defined procedures and practices, and you have local standards. Policy is the local organization's law, if you will. So you have to have if you're going to use credit cards, you need to have a formal policy. A lot of businesses don't have a formal policy, but maybe what they have is something like that, where if somebody is going to be using credit cards with the business, they have to sign a form that establishes, an understanding of how data is protected and so on. Of course, we've already talked about jurisdiction. Just remember that if a state or local regulation is more stringent then it may override federal or international standards or regulations, right? So federal computer laws are mainly written for federal information systems, and that doesn't apply to private organizations unless they receive federal funding. We got to make sure that that's in there. I may change this slide just to make sure it says unless they receive federal funding. Information security professionals are responsible for understanding the other requirements of those additional jurisdictions, the territory or state regulations, any municipal, city government kind of regulations, that kind of thing. We've talked about international law and the International Standards Organization, or ISO, but there are some cybersecurity interests and legal bodies internationally. We've mentioned Interpol, haven't we? Did we mention Interpol?
Yeah.
International police. And then there's some stuff, there are some interests with the United Nations. When they do business on the internet, they're doing business globally. So whenever this is one thing we just don't think about. We put our website out there, and it's not long before we have international interests. True story. Last year, system security, we set up some basic systems, some servers, web pages, that kind of thing, for the system security students, and put them on the UVI network within a matter of hours. Actually, I think they were on another network. Within a matter of hours, we were able to capture with NetStat. Everybody remember NetStat?
Yeah.
Yes. So NetStat-A, there were hosts that we backtraced to Moscow, Russia, within 48 hours. Your predecessors in a class last year at this campus, right? So here we are in UVI doing virtual machines in a cloud, and Moscow, Russia is knocking at the door trying to break into those systems. They were not successful. Professionals have to be sensitive to the laws and ethical values of many different cultures and countries. Sometimes you might reach out to the Canadian Mounted Police because they have a cybersecurity division. Because of the political complexities, right? There are a few international laws that cover privacy and information security, but the important thing to understand are the limitations to enforceability, especially when it comes to non-extradition treaty nations. Now, in a previous class not long ago, we explained what non-extradition means. What does that mean? Let's just revisit that briefly. Anyone?
It's a country that doesn't extradite you back to your country of origin.
That's right. So if you break a law and you go to a foreign country and the law enforcement of this country knows you're there, they'll communicate to the law enforcement and they'll say, hey, we need you to send this person back to us, extradite them. And in non-extradition treaty countries, they don't recognize any of that. It basically declared to everybody, we're not doing that. We're not your police force. We're not going to risk our life and limb to chase somebody down that you had a problem with. We just don't do that. And there's a short list of nations that practice that kind of sensibility. That's a limitation, right? And the enforceability, especially if somebody's setting up on the internet in those non-extradition treaty nations. A young man found a way to bootleg movies and music. He was out on an island in Indonesia. I think it was non-extradition treaty. And then moved to a new place after hundreds of millions of dollars in illegal profit were gained. And our feds were waiting for him. And he's in prison now. In Europe, there's a convention on cybercrime, right? That was created, a task force. And this is something we're seeing more of, is that we're finding that there's a partnership between governments and their agencies and organizations and corporations and businesses. It's like a diverse team of individuals. They're forming up task forces. And the US government did this recently. And then Europe has done it also. So the idea is to improve effectiveness, especially intellectual property rights when people are stealing creative works. There are some gaps where it's kind of hard for the International Task Force. One of the Achilles heels is that they're not integrated very well with enforcement, though. And so this is an area of improvement. The World Trade Organization and the Agreement on Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights is another resource for people when intellectual property is being stolen or bootlegged or marketed or reproduced. Yeah, there's 25-cent CDs, thousands of them with popular new artists and their music, and their chance to make a lot of money, it just evaporates, right? So it covers 5 basic issues. So, but the main goal is to preserve and protect creative works until a new system is adopted. Now, we've made reference to this in the United States of America, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. This is the federal law that protects creative works, copyrights, trademarks, privacy infringement, and so on. The European Union Directive 95/46/EC is similar. It states, it prohibits the circumvention of protections and countermeasures. So if you have encrypted music, to protect the music, and somebody breaks the encryption, has anyone ever heard of breaking movie encryption? There's literally a program out there called Handbrake. You use it to capture encrypted versions of movies and then you break the encryption. That's illegal in certain circles, right? So if you have devices or software that circumvent this stuff, it's a serious business. If that's sent and received to Europeans, you can be facing charges under 95/46 EC that you're helping somebody bootleg music because you have a friend in Spain or Italy or Portugal or Russia or wherever. Something we don't think about, but it can happen, right? Any questions or comments about this?
No.
Just remember DMCA, right? Now there is something called the RIAA, the Recording Industry Arts Association, something like that. And that's an industry organization that sponsored a lot of the lobby expenses to get Congress to adopt the DMCA. So the Recording Industry Association, I think it's Artists Association, Recording Industry Artists Association. We talk about ethics and information security. A lot of the certifications that you can get in cybersecurity include explicit rules about ethical behavior, what you can and cannot do. And this is great stuff. It's just important to understand that while we are bound to operate ethically, we're working against an adversary that doesn't give a hoot about any of this, right? So it's actually good to know these constraints because our adversaries are often trying to operate around and behind ethical boundaries, right? If you know the boundaries, you know where to look beyond the boundaries. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
you know, it's ethical for you not to do what? Capture data coming from a neighbor's computer. But if you understand that's the ethical standard, what do you think hackers are doing, right? It just helps you establish important standards and criteria. So information technology and information security do not have binding codes of ethics. However, if you're caught cheating when you're trying to certify for a lot of industry certifications in IT or in cybersecurity, if you bootleg the questions on those certification exams and you're caught doing that, they'll revoke your certification. So even though they don't have a binding code of ethics, if you're caught doing something like that, your certifications can be revoked. And I've actually seen that kind of thing play out where, you know, folks take a Microsoft Certified Systems Administration exam, or they take a Security Plus exam, or they take a PMP exam, and they're cheating. You take pictures of the screens and they sell the screenshots from the exam on the internet. People can lose their certs. So even though there's no jail time involved, it's kind of hard to operate without proper certifications. So that is one aspect of professional disciplines that is binding, and it's not here on the, it's not really here on the screen. We've talked about computer ethics, and this is part of our study guide and addendum. This is already stated that way. The first 8 are thou shalt nots. The last 2 are thou shalts. So, yeah, this is just review before your assessment, but understanding ethics is a matter of understanding culture. And there can be differences in ethics depending on differences in culture. As a general rule, if something is legal, it's considered to be ethical because you're not breaking a law. And that would probably be one of the few hard and fast rules, right? If you are operating in an ethical manner and it's specific to your culture, but you're conducting services in another place where the mores are different, the beliefs are different, it's important to take that into account. That's just one thing we want to stress here. So again, this is basically review. Of course, education, awareness, and training is really vital for this. We have talked about deterrence. This was something in the summary that we covered a few days ago. If you don't have teeth in your rules, they won't work. And there are 3 general causes of unethical and illegal behavior: ignorance, accident, and intent. So deterrent works when there's a fear of a penalty, there's a likelihood of being apprehended, and there's a likelihood you'll have to pay dearly for it, right? So unless those 3 conditions are present and the laws and policies aren't written that way, you're going to have a hard time keeping things under wraps. But deterrence is the best method for preventing illegal or unethical activity. You're serving people notice, right? So if you have technical controls that prevent access, you have policies that say, these are the things you can be fired for, and you have laws. You know, unauthorized access to this system of the VI government will result in criminal prosecution. So, but ignorance doesn't work when it comes to the law. Just remember, you can say you're not aware of a policy, but you can't say, yeah, I don't know that, I didn't know it was unlawful to steal somebody's music. Yeah, that's not going to hold water. Good example of how deterrence works. You and I both know that there are some places where there are plenty of parking signs, but is it not true that in some places in our territory, people park there anyway? Would that be an accurate statement?
Yeah, that's a very accurate statement.
People park there anyway. And do they worry about their car getting towed right away?
Nope.
No. Would you believe in big cities in the States like Chicago and New York? Guess how long it takes you to park somewhere you're not supposed to and your car gets towed? Guess what the
Like,
average is?
I'd say like less than an hour, probably.
Oh yeah, a matter of minutes. Just a matter of minutes. They have a system down and they basically, they say violators will be towed. And what they do is well, they're either ticketed or they're towed, right? But it can happen very fast. And this is one way that some law enforcement agencies fund their staffing, right? People are writing tickets, people have to pay the tickets. That's just one of those things. We've discussed codes of ethics before, right? And how it's important for security professionals to have a consistent way that they operate. It says many employers do not encourage joining these professional organizations. Now, I would argue that this is on you. Now, I know that's what this states right here, but I'm going to tell you that if you work for someone and you pursue a cybersecurity certification, you should press your employer and say, hey, I operate ethically, and there's a cost associated with the professional organizations, and my certification means that I have a higher standard of performance, which means I expect better salary and benefits, right? And this is one way that we can advocate with employers. A lot of times things don't happen because, well, the professionals are just happy enough to get a job. But this is one area where I think we should be a little more proactive and progressive, right? If you are bound to act ethically and you have to conduct the way you operate, when you apply your skills, you have to do it in a certain manner. How is that any different than a judge in a courtroom operating ethically? Or, right? I mean, fill in the blanks. A medical professional operating ethically. When you think about it, this is good business all around. And what we should do is have an honest dialogue with people who employ us and say, look, if you want standards, if you want good performance, this is how we do it. When I certify, that should mean something, and it's a win-win. Now, if that's not what you expect or want, what do you do if you're employed by an organization that really doesn't give a darn about ethics? That's a tough question. But I would argue that you probably don't want to stay too long with that organization if you want to remain ethical. Just saying. You're not going to find that in a book anywhere. Here are some professional organizations that are worth mentioning. The Association for Computing Machinery. This is a part of the IEEE, the International Electronics and Electrical Engineers, right? This is the computing component of the IEEE, and they have a great code of ethics about how to operate ethically with technology. It's an organization called ISACA. I'm just picturing like a Disney cartoon or something where there's a very animated character, this ISACA, right? Every time I see that acronym, like, it kind of cracks me up. But it's a very serious organization, and they have 2 cybersecurity certifications that are highly valued, the CISA and the CISM. ISSA, so This is another cybersecurity association. ISC squared, these are, so these first three have, I want to say, more to do with business and general technology and finance, right? Especially ISACA. Finance and the technology components of finance. So if you're looking at being a certified forensic accountant, this is a great organization, right? And ISSA has a strong code of ethics, and they have certifications also. I will tell you, when it comes to recognition, though, it's this second page you should take a note of. You almost want to capture a screenshot of this. Okay, when it comes to the gold standard for certifications that are recognized internationally, there are three that are usually near the top of every list. ISC squared, right? They're the ones that promote the CISSP, and the CISSP is considered one of the highest certifications anyone can achieve in cybersecurity, both for technology and for management components. The CISSP is recognized internationally and federally as the top certification. The SSCP is like a mid-tier. SANS is also an international organization. So ISC Square, I think, was founded by people from NASA and people from the FBI and such. So certain federal organizations were involved with the founders of this organization. If you read on the history, SANS was founded by people from the Department of Defense, the National Security Agency, right? So in SANS, their certifications tend to be more technical in nature, where some of the ISC squared certifications focus more on management, although that's a generalization. The CISSP covers both. EC Council, this certification, Certified Ethical Hacking. If you look at my signature block in my email, I have a CEH after this, and 75,000 members worldwide, right? I don't know how many that are SANS and ISC squared, but essentially these are like the big three that you should look at for technical cybersecurity certifications. Any questions about which of these organizations or anything about them? Did you know that do we have any concentration? We have any students that are part of the cybersecurity concentration?
Yeah, me. Zidane.
Okay. So we have an association, an established relationship with SANS, and you can participate at no cost in SANS training. When you certify, if you take the test and pass the test and you're certified, then you receive academic credit, right? You get 3 credits for a cybersecurity elective. The concentration requires 6 credit hours of electives, and a cybersecurity certification is a fantastic way to fill one of those elective requirements, because it'll basically log 3 credits. If you pass the certification, you're going to receive an A, because these are rigorous certifications. But the better news is when you go off into the workforce and somebody says, well, we want you to get certified eventually, you're going to say, I already have it. I'm already cybersecurity certified, right? And people will ask you and they'll say, well, what do you have? I'm certified ethical hacker, or I have a GIAC, GCIH. That's a certified incident handler, global certified incident handler. It's all sorts of wonderful certifications with SANS. Again, the gold standard with federal government, CISSP, if you have that, you have all the bases covered. I guess that's the biggest claim to fame for ISC squared. Any questions about cybersecurity certifications and how they can be a good thing for you in our UVI program if you're part of the concentration? Going once. If you would like to consider a certification as a part of your concentration, send me an email. We can start priming the pump right now.
And you said this is at no extra cost, right?
Yes, it can be one of the concentration courses that you complete when you finish the cybersecurity concentration for the degree. We will add a certificate soon to the department so that people who just want to do the cyber piece and they just want to do 5 classes, they can do that independently apart from a degree program. So the intent this academic year is to propose and get approved a certificate that lets you do 5 cyber courses regardless of your major. So you could be a criminal justice major, you could be a business finance major, you could be, anything really. So this is just more detailed information about each of these associations. This reference is in the references folder. I'm not going to go over each of it. I gave you the broad strokes on all of those, right? So it's good stuff to work up on. As far as federal agencies and standards, CISA is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. When you look at federal agencies that are specifically focused on cyber, this is the big one here, and the US CERT is the big one. So, Cybersecurity Emergency Response Team. Okay? Everybody understand what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
So, it's offering a variety of services to who? Just the US government? No. Industry? Who else? Private sector? Who else? Academic environments? Who else? Nonprofit, non-government organizations, right? And what? The general public, AKA everyone. CISA and US CERT. Of course, US Secret Service has to do with finances, so anything that has to do with digital money, the US Secret Service is all over it. So you can report an incident, and you should. This is a great example. You go to us-cert.cisa.gov. So the CERT is actually a part of CISA, right? It's incident response, incident reporting system. You can basically say, I am an impacted user. I'm reporting on behalf of an impacted user. If you would like to log some really cool references for a resume, find something nasty, and be the first to report it. I'm serious. Let someone else pay for an advanced studies program at a graduate school, and all your costs are covered. Housing, tuition. Start doing this kind of stuff here, and then they start looking up and they see that your name is on this. Anyone can do this. Very few do this. If you're paying attention at all on a Friday afternoon and you want a way to pay for your grad school, this is one ticket that could really pay off. Because you start logging your name with credible cyber incidents. It's kind of like bug bounties, right? Has anyone ever heard of the term bug bounty?
No. Bug bounties? Like,
Yeah.
is it like looking for like holes in a system for like a website or something?
Yes,
Or
there are some software publishers and gaming companies that pay bug bounties so that they flush out the software bugs before they cause problems with users, right? It's a really cool concept. The CISA you're not really gaining as much as you're not getting a monetary payment. What you are getting is a very serious recognition and your name logged in some very powerful circles. And that is really worth the time and effort. So, all right, let's see if we can blitz through to the end here. We're almost done, but FBI has a National InfraGuard, that's Infrastructure Guardian Program, InfraGuard, right? Of course, they're the primary law enforcement agency whenever you have cyber crimes. And the U.S. Department of Commerce is involved, right? The Federal Trade Commission is involved with identity theft. So those two federal agencies are really important to note. Everybody's seen this before, right? Most wanted list.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's actually a cyber most wanted. Just thought I'd mention. And then, of course, the National Security Agency. It has to do with cryptography and with the Information Assurance Directorate, or IAD. So when the national security agencies, there's a director of national security, right? Responsible for signal intelligence. So when it comes to really sensitive information, these are the folks that are all about protecting our secrets. So which federal agency is most responsible for developing and using encryption? Well, we said this has to do with criminal cyber. This has to do with money. This has to do with standards. So by process of elimination, encryption, right? National Security Agency. All right, that's it. We've already been through the summary. I want to wish each of you the best of luck in your first attempt of the Module 3 assessment. Be sure you complete your first attempt of the Module 3 assessment before Monday, 1 p.m. I'll try to remind you, keep your eyes peeled, and log your first attempt. Any questions before we clear for the weekend? All right. Well, in Module 4, we're going to get more hands-on, so I want to get that assessment for Module 3 in the rearview mirror. Have a great weekend, everyone.